Get cool stuff for what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, you can just snap a photo of your receipt and upload it to the website to rack up points for exclusive merch. Get points for every purchase, whether you're grabbing a pint on draft, a case for a party, or a tall boy at the stadium. Any size, any product, anywhere you buy Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Sign up now at rewards.labattusa.com.
Hey, Dabo Sweeney, congrats. I got you in, baby.
This is entertainment. People pay to watch this.
Pass to a cutting Hiltz. He darts in. He scores!
People actually subscribe.
All across central New York.
Time expired! Syracuse has done it!
It's Drive Time with your host, Tim Leonard.
Hey, guess what? I'm getting wide. Hey!
We welcome you into a Friday Drive Time. The weekend is here. Syracuse football back in action tomorrow. Home opener inside the Dome, and we're jacked up. Under 24 hours away from that noon kickoff tomorrow, Syracuse and UConn. Orange looking to get to 1-1 on the season. 6.5-point favorites tomorrow against the Huskies. We'll get you our full score prediction for tomorrow's game. Want to hear from you throughout the show today. Last chance to get in your takes on this UConn game. Your pick for tomorrow's matchup at noon. 315-437-7644 is the phone number to call. That is always the phone number to call, and it is open throughout the show today for ESPN 44. Hop on in the Q Sports Talk chat on YouTube, on QSportsTalk.com, our Twitch stream. No breaks on the Q Sports Talk Twitch stream or the YouTube simulcast of the show. Just good to have football back in the Dome tomorrow. NFL season officially started last night. NFL game again tonight. A pretty good one. Chiefs and the Chargers. Hopefully that field in Brazil will be better than it was last time. Big game tonight in the NFL. Chiefs and the Chargers. Full slate of NFL games on Sunday. We are back into the thick of football season. And Syracuse is back inside the JMA Wireless Dome tomorrow, taking on UConn. So we'll get you my full prediction before the end of the show today. I'm starting to feel a little bit better. The more I dig into this matchup, the better I'm feeling about Syracuse's chances tomorrow against the Huskies. I do feel like the fan base as a collective has started to feel worse the more that they have dug into the matchup. When we looked at the schedule at the start of the season, I don't think we were looking at this game as a toss-up. As Paulie would say, it's become a little bit more tossy-uppy in the last, 5-7 days. But at this point, I'm feeling pretty good about Syracuse, and we'll lay out why I feel that way as we roll along with the show today. Again, 315-437-7644 if you want to chime in. New show, 5 to 6 p.m. We'll be here every single weeknight the rest of the way going forward. Syracuse football season, we're here with you on the weeknights, continuing to get you ready for each and every game. Basketball, we'll be talking a lot of that. It's all local Syracuse sports here on Drive Time with Tim Leonard. So keep that in mind as part of your routine going forward. It's been great to get the show going officially this week. But we begin today's show with one of the more surprising stats I came across in my research for this game. And probably the biggest misconception right now about how Syracuse football played in week one and what went down on the field and what they need to change. I've talked to a lot of fans this week. I've seen a lot of fans in the chat this week that have said the biggest problem with the defense is they need to blitz more. Syracuse needs to blitz more is a common thing, a common narrative that is out there right now. And after the Tennessee game, 0 sacks, it felt like the narrative still worked, that Syracuse needs to blitz more. Well, I did the research today, and Syracuse actually blitzed more than any team in the country in week one. They blitzed 67% of dropbacks against Tennessee. 19 of the 29 dropbacks against Tennessee, Syracuse blitzed. So actually, that's just a misconception right now. The takeaway from week one, when you look into the stats, is despite a lot of blitzing, Syracuse did not get home. They didn't get to the quarterback in week one. They had 0 sacks against Tennessee. They weren't a team that generated a lot of sacks last year. They missed some tackles in the backfield. They struggled to win one-on-one battles against Tennessee, which a lot of teams are going to struggle to win one-on-one battles in the trenches against a very well-recruited SEC team. But pretty interesting. Everyone's been saying this week Elijah Robinson needs to blitz more. Syracuse led the country in week one in the percentage of times that they blitzed. According to Pro Football Focus, the Orange blitzed on 19 of 29 Tennessee dropbacks. The highest mark after week one and week 0, the highest mark in the country right now in terms of how often a team blitzed. Pretty surprising, right? Now, I will say, if you thought last year Syracuse did not blitz enough last year, you were right, maybe. Or at least the stats say that they really didn't blitz a ton last year. So this was out of character for Elijah Robinson. The stats last year say Syracuse only blitzed 22% of the time, according to Pro Football Focus. That was 118th in the nation in how often they were blitzing. 118th in the country in the FBS. That was the 6th lowest mark among Power 4 teams last year. So they did not blitz very much last year. The average is about 35% of the time, according to Pro Football Focus, college football teams blitz. And I see some people saying, define blitz in the chat. How exactly do they determine that? I'm sure it's just as simple as sending an extra guy, right? You have 4 down linemen, you have 3 down linemen. I don't think we need to overthink it. It's probably as simple as they sent someone else off the line. And Syracuse did that, according to Pro Football Focus, more than any team in the nation in week one. So, what are the takeaways from that? A little concerning that they still did not get a single sack. Concerning that when you look at the individual pieces and how they graded from a pass rush standpoint in week one, Syracuse did not have great performances and did not really win their battles one-on-one against Tennessee. Now, I do think they will win their battles one-on-one against UConn. So I'm encouraged that it was just an SEC team maybe, and the schedule, well, it is tough, is probably not going to be as tough as going up against Tennessee. That might be one of the toughest matchups of the season. It definitely will be. But the concern is, even though Syracuse did blitz a lot, they didn't get a ton of pressure on the quarterback, Joey Aguilar. They only got pressure 31% of the time. 9 times on the 29 dropbacks for Joey Aguilar of Tennessee was he pressured. Also, Aguilar was very, very good under pressure. The book on him was they needed to pressure him. They needed to get him into that gunslinger mindset that he has had at Appalachian State, where he led the country or was right up there nationally in interceptions and turnover-worthy plays in the last couple of seasons. They didn't get enough pressure on him, and he was really effective under pressure. Joey Aguilar had a 90 PFF grade, an 87 PFF grade when he was blitzed. 90 PFF grade when he was under pressure is what I was thinking of. So he was really good under pressure. Syracuse only got pressure on him 31% of the time. And the interesting thing is, of the 19 blitzes, Syracuse really was not effective at getting pressure on the quarterback when they blitzed him in a passing situation. They were actually more effective at getting pressure when they were not blitzing. So 19 times they blitzed, 5 of those times they got pressure on Joey Aguilar. 26% of the time they blitzed, they actually got pressure. 0 sacks in the game in week 1 against Tennessee. The other 10 times that they did not blitz and Joey Aguilar dropped back to pass, 4 of those times they got pressure on him. So 40% of the time they got pressure when they were not blitzing. 26% of the time they got pressure when they were blitzing. Kind of goes contrary to what you think. You flip it around and you wonder, All right, so Syracuse blitzed 68% of the time, basically. 67.7% of the time. 19 of 29 dropbacks, they blitzed against Tennessee. You flip it around and you think, how much did Tennessee blitz? Because they sacked Syracuse 5 times, and it seemed like they were in the backfield on Steve Angeli. What do the stats say about, was that Steve Angeli holding onto the ball too much? Was that the offensive line getting beat? Was that blitzing a lot from Tennessee? Tennessee blitzed about an average amount, slightly more than average. They blitzed 38% of the time. We told you earlier, 35% is about average in college football, according to Pro Football Focus. Tennessee got pressure about as much as Syracuse. 32% of the time, they got pressure on Steve Angeli. 31% of the time, Syracuse got pressure on Joey Aguilar. 15 of the 47 dropbacks for Syracuse, Tennessee had pressure on the quarterback, Steve Angeli. Tennessee, like Syracuse, was pretty effective at getting pressure when they weren't blitzing, which is some of the stuff that we've heard Fran Brown talk about. They were disguising their coverages very well. They were disguising their schemes. They'd have a linebacker drop back, then when the snap came, he would dart in. So it was non-traditional blitzing that really fooled Syracuse. And Fran Brown said it after the game. He gave them a lot of credit. Then he said on the coaches' show last night out at Myers Creek that there were a couple bust-ups. There were just guys not reading it right. There were a couple times just watching back the game, Syracuse had the right amount of players, right amount of offensive linemen to control the blitz. They just didn't pick up a guy who became a free rusher, basically, because of the disguising, because of what Tennessee is very good at, which is disguising their scheme and sending a delayed blitz at times. So Tennessee, actually 33% of the time they got pressure when they did not blitz, and they also got pressure about 33% of the time when they did blitz. 9 out of 27 dropbacks, non-blitzing, Tennessee got pressure on Syracuse. 6 of 18 dropbacks when blitzing, they got pressure on Steve Angeli. That adds up to 15 times he was pressured out of 47 dropbacks. Steve Angeli actually had a pretty good PFF grade when he was blitzed. And the stats on him, remember last year, Kyle McCord going into the season? The stats said when Kyle McCord has a clean pocket, he's incredible at Ohio State, at least. When he doesn't have a clean pocket, he really struggles. That kind of reverse. Kyle McCord was one of the best passers in the country when getting blitzed last year and under pressure. So maybe there's something to be said about Jeff Nixon, his offense, another guy that likes to get the ball out quickly. It was more that when the disguises worked, and it wasn't necessarily a blitz maybe, but it was someone coming from a different area, that's the stuff that tripped up Steve Angeli in week 1, and he did not grade well under pressure, and a lot of that is because it's a small sample size, and he fumbled the football a couple times. Lost just one of those fumbles, but he did fumble it twice. 44.3 grade on Pro Football Focus for Steve Angeli while under pressure. Obviously not good. These grades are 0 to 100. That's not incredibly bad because everyone does see a dip when they're under pressure. That's natural. But he was good when he was getting blitzed. According to these grades, he just wasn't good when he was under pressure. And Tennessee was able to get home without blitzing a ton. Syracuse did blitz a ton. Very out of character from what we saw last year, and they didn't get home. So a little concerning. I think a takeaway here is Syracuse's defensive line struggled for sure in week 1. Does that mean they're going to struggle against UConn tomorrow? I don't think so. Does that mean they're going to struggle against Clemson week 4? Maybe. Probably. I think defensive line is an area that maybe they don't have enough pieces right now to feel great about the D-line. Maybe these guys prove me wrong. But that's the area and the weakness with the team right now based on what I'm seeing in the stats. I lay that all out, though, because I think it is a misconception right now to say Elijah Robinson did not blitz enough in week 1. It's a scheme problem. I think it's more of a player problem. Based on those stats, he blitzed more than any other defensive coordinator in the country in week 1. They just had 0 sacks. They've got to find a way to get to the quarterback tomorrow and going forward, and I'm sure they're working on ways to do that. But that's how we start the show today. The biggest misconception right now about how Syracuse football played in week 1 is the idea that they are not blitzing enough. They blitzed more than anyone else in the country in week 1, an out-of-character turn from how they did last year. They were 118th in the country in their blitz rate last year, just 22% of the time. So those stats, courtesy of Pro Football Focus. We're off and running on our Friday show. Get on in the Q Sports Talk chat, Q Sports Talk on the YouTube page as well. I want to hear your thoughts on Syracuse and UConn. Your thoughts on Elijah Robinson and if they were blitzing enough and what they need to do to figure out the defense and what those numbers mean to you. 315-437-7644 is the phone number to call, and we will have the phone lines open throughout the hour show today. We're back after this on QSportsTalk.com and ESPN Radio.
Sunday, the Giants.
What's up, chat? Super Cat, how we doing? Yeah, Tennessee's got some big boys. I think that's the takeaway. Tronic, I think it's just, are they going after the quarterback, right? Like, I mean, I can look up the definition for you guys. My takeaway is it's probably just someone who's charting them all and freezing the frames and all that. Here we go. PFF blitz. The percentage of pass plays where the defender sends an extra rusher. That's their definition, which is kind of what I figured. Jeff Nixon is a terrific OC. All the guys have been raving about him this week, and they should be, all the players that I've talked to. It's a big playbook, too. You talk to the players, and they're like, yeah, there's a lot of plays in this playbook compared to other ones that they're used to. Yeah, I think if you blitz, I think you're right, Tronic. It's just, are you sending an extra rusher? A Hilton property? I'm not sure, Dom. Obviously, I never really look for hotels when I'm here. Trying to think. Maybe someone else can help you out with that, because I would guess around Carrier Circle there might be something that's tied into Hilton. There's a lot of hotels over there. There's less hotels right off the campus now, just with how it's worked out. Yeah, I can't think of any off the top of my head. Got some hotels around Destiny, of course. Yeah, if you're asking, sorry, I didn't even see the walking distance. There's definitely not a walking distance, sadly. I mean, at least I don't think there is. I agree with you, San Diego Cuse. They got our guy Wes Ho, but they definitely lost a good amount on the offensive line. I think they did a good job for UConn recuperating in the transfer portal. They got a Notre Dame guy. I think their offensive line coach, who is also their OC, is a good coach. And they held up decently well last year, but when they played Syracuse, I mean, and even for that matter against other ACC teams. But I think they've taken a step back in the trenches compared to last year, specifically defensive line. I do think their defensive line is maybe the weakest position group on the team for UConn. Yeah. Yeah, you're right about the defensive side. The offensive line is better for them. It's kind of like Syracuse. I mean, based on 1 week, I think we're a little more hesitant to praise the D-line than the O-line. Now, the O-line wasn't incredible, but they also, for new look O-line going against Tennessee, basically a road game. I thought they played pretty well. I'm definitely going to monitor it going forward, Tronic. I want to know, was that Tennessee? Was that game flow? They were behind. They felt the need to get more aggressive and blitz. They weren't getting home. Because to go from 22% blitzing last year to 67, 68% in one game is pretty staggering.
7.7 and 100.1. Watch live on QSportsTalk.com.
Well, they blew up the chicken man in Philly last night. Now they blew up his house too.
Bruce Springsteen brings us back on a Friday drive time. Orange back inside the Dome tomorrow. Excited to see just another Saturday game day. Looks like it's going to be a little rainy, but hope you'll join us out on the quad. We'll have our Syracuse Learfield pregame show rocking and rolling shortly after the quad walk tomorrow. Don't forget about the quad walk. Good turnout for those last year. 9:45 is the NIAUTO quad walk starting tomorrow, but you probably want to get out to the quad right around 9:30. Noon kick for the first home game against UConn tomorrow. 315-437-7644 is the phone number to call if you have thoughts on the UConn game. If you have thoughts on what I just laid out in the first segment, that the narrative that Elijah Robinson isn't blitzing enough and Elijah Robinson's the problem and fire Elijah Robinson. I've been hearing a lot of that after one game against an SEC team. And I guess plenty of you are using last year as well as evidence. It wasn't a great year, of course, defensively last year, and they had warts in terms of tackling and run defense, and I'm sure it is driving Elijah Robinson and Fran Brown and the entire coaching staff nuts that the thing that they were working on the most in the offseason, tackling and getting turnovers and generating turnover-worthy plays, did not pan out in week one. But the more I dig into this matchup, and I'm going to give you guys my full score prediction and some of the things that I think will make a difference in this game tomorrow, the better I am feeling about Syracuse. So you can call in, give your thoughts, 315-437-7644. Do want to talk some about the transfer portal news that came out yesterday. We were going to get to it on the show last night, didn't have time to. Interesting news, very big shakeup if this goes through. The transfer portal and the NCAA oversight committee made the decision to at least move it to the next phase. There's going to be a vote on this by early October to confirm this. The administrative committee must deliver its final ruling on this by October 1st if we want to get really official in the lingo here. And the change could take effect by January of this football season, 2026. The change is removing the spring transfer portal window. Right now, there are two windows. There is one in December. There's one in April, kind of middle April and spring. So after spring camp wraps up, if you're a guy that doesn't like where your standing is on your team, or if you're a guy that is playing very well in spring ball and you're getting a lot of higher and better offers and you had a good spring game and there's been some tampering and a team that's better than the team you're on is trying to poach you, think Trevor Pena, then you could enter the spring transfer portal. Right now, it seems like that is going to go away in favor of just one transfer portal in the winter that is being pushed back as far as they can possibly push this thing back without it cutting into not being possible for someone to enter the portal and get to their next school in time for the academic calendars and the spring semesters to start. So remember last year, there was all this discussion about why is the backup quarterback for Penn State in the portal when his team is in the college football playoff? We've got to figure this out. The Texas quarterback who ended up going to Duke 2 years ago, same thing. Malik Murphy. Bo Prabula was the quarterback for Penn State last year, who I believe Syracuse at least looked at. Now he's at Missouri. Well, you really can't push it back much more because they're still student athletes, technically. I know everything we're doing right now makes it seem like school is not even a part of the equation. And it's kind of silly to think, oh, yeah, these guys still go to class when they're millionaires. A lot of them are, at least, or they're looking to get those big contracts. But you got to make sure that a kid enrolls before the start of the spring semester. And I don't think they're going to move up the start of football season or move up the date of the national championship game. If anything, that date is getting further and further into January. So right now, January 2nd to January 11th would be the proposed new window. That would mean once the quarterfinal round of the college football playoff ends, the transfer portal window opens. Essentially, if you're in the Final Four, if you're in one of these two semifinal games, and then eventually the national championship game, which I believe is around January 19th this year, well, you might have to enter the transfer portal if you're a backup on those teams, or you're going to have to weigh your options and make a decision. So it impacts 4 teams. The good news with that would be all these bowl games that have become so irrelevant and no one really cares about because no one's playing in these bowl games. You would think more guys would still be on the roster, would not have technically entered the transfer portal, and therefore would not opt out of the game. Now, there still will be NFL guys that don't want to risk injury in a bowl game that isn't that meaningful. That still will happen. But it should be better for more guys playing in bowl games. So we started talking about this on Orange Nation, and we laid out the pros and cons of how they are doing it now compared to how they want to change it to just one window, just 10 days. That's going to lead to a lot of tampering, which is already going on. It's a very short window, I feel, for everyone who's in compliance and anyone that is trying to handle the getting the athletes ready to go and enrolled, because that is an incredibly tight turnaround. And I feel for really just the student athlete a little bit because, well, they probably have already started talking to coaches, and even though that's technically not allowed, I'm sure there will be tampering and conversations towards the, I don't know, end of November, early December, maybe even before that, and agents are always looking out for their guys throughout the season. It's pretty obvious to tell which guys that aren't playing are probably going to try to at least have conversations with other teams. But even if they are having those conversations, it's going to be a tight turnaround. You don't have to decide on the school in that 10-day window, but you kind of do have to decide before the spring semester starts, which in the case of Syracuse, that starts January 12th this year. So if you're a guy that wants to transfer to Syracuse, which it's a little tough that Syracuse is on the early side of this. Pete Nakos was on Orange Nation earlier today and talked about how there is some concern among coaches, agents, players, that there is a distinct advantage in the schools that have a later start date to their spring semester compared to a school that has an earlier start date. Syracuse is a little bit on the early side from what I know, at least. And what I've gathered, January 12th is on the early side. I looked at a couple SEC schools. Tennessee is January 19th, for one example. So you don't have much time if you're Syracuse to see, okay, this guy entered his name in the portal as early as January 2nd, which there still will be a flood of names. We got to get him here. We got to get him enrolled into classes by January. We got to get him on a visit. We got to make sure we talk to him, get the NIL contract all organized. And that's why tampering is definitely going to happen. It's already happening. And those conversations will have to start long before January 2nd. So we're not naive to that. The upside of no spring transfer portal is maybe we can get back to seeing some spring games with guys that are actually playing, because there's a big fear among college coaches right now. Matt Rule was one of them who was very vocal at Nebraska about this. Why would I play a spring game if it's just going to showcase some guys that are maybe doing a little bit better than the average person thinks? And then that school that is a little bit better than us is going to come in with a stronger offer and a better offer and poach him away. Well, if there's no spring transfer portal window and there's no player movement in the spring, you don't have that fear as much. The other thing is, I just think the amount of player movement will go down. Look at Syracuse's roster this year. It would look entirely different if there was not a spring transfer portal window this year. Steve Angeli, for one, would not be the quarterback. Jonte Cook would not be a starting wide receiver. Trevor Pena would still be on the team. When Pena hit the portal, Jonte Cook came in. The Orange added 9 of their 16 transfers that they added throughout both transfer portal windows this year. 9 of them, of the 16, were in the spring transfer portal window that likely will not exist as early as next spring if this goes through. 7 of those 9 guys were starters in week 1. Angeli, Jonte Cook, 2 offensive linemen, TJ Ferguson, Austin Collins, started in week 1. George Rooks, the defensive lineman from BC, legacy guy, added in the spring transfer portal. Linebacker Gary Bryant, after Fran Brown openly said, we assessed what we had in the spring and we needed a guy with more tackling there, which is another kind of indication that they knew all along they needed a little bit more on the defense. You could also point to Jamie Tremble, seemingly kind of late in the process, although it was talked about, it seems like, but he changed his number late in the process to 82. Just a couple weeks ago, I think he changed his number. Maybe that was an indication that, okay, we need to move some things around. We need to get one of our better athletes at the linebacker position because we don't feel great about what we have there. Then you got Chris Peel as well, their starting corner, probably the best corner on the team, was a spring portal ad from Georgia. They lost a considerable amount of guys in the spring portal window. Murad Watson to Texas, David Wollaba to Virginia. Enrique Cruz realized he probably wasn't going to start. He went to Kansas to start. Trevor Pena is the big headline name. Penn State swooped in, and we know what happened there. We also found out about Zeed Haynes and King Joseph Edwards, who have not landed on any other teams, but they were spring transfer portal guys that left the program. So the roster would look entirely different. The fear really is, let's say, which we understand now that Ricky Collins did not have an awfully serious injury, and he was fine to pick it up in fall camp, and it just held him out of the spring game and maybe a little bit at the end of spring camp. But let's say it was a serious injury to your starting quarterback. Like if you're Syracuse and there's no spring transfer portal window, and you've got your NIL budget together and you've got to figure out your quarterback in January, and you say, all right, we can't spend too much money on a quarterback, but we got to go get a quarterback. Let's put all our chips in on Ricky Collins because that's what you kind of have to do now. Not a lot of teams are putting a ton of NIL resources into 2 or 3 quarterbacks. What if Ricky Collins got seriously hurt? What do you do then? I mean, we know what you do. You turn to the backup and you figure it out. But it did feel like Fran Brown realized, okay, Ricky has an injury. Steve Angeli's name is out there. We have a relationship with Steve. Let's bring him in. That'll only improve our football team. More competition is better. It felt like they assessed things at the end of spring camp. Linebacker being a position of need. Offensive line. Remember Mark Petrie had that career-ending injury, unfortunately. We found out about that. We found out that David Wollaba was leaving. Enrique Cruz was leaving, and that may have not been totally related, but still, you lost some pieces. They had to go add some pieces in the transfer portal. So it's interesting to think how much this is going to change things. I think, for one, the good news for the average college football fan, less player movement overall, probably. There's still going to be a lot of guys entering. And maybe if you're on the fence about entering, you do enter because you don't have the option of, well, let's just see how spring camp goes. And if I get what I want in terms of where I am on the depth chart, and then if I don't, I'll enter in the spring. It's going to be interesting. It seems like this is happening. It seems like coaches like it because right now the schedule in December is crazy for a college football coach. They have to worry about National Signing Day, wrapping up high school recruiting, still coaching their team for, in theory, the most important games of the season, especially if you are a high-level coach for a college football playoff team. And the transfer portal opens, and you're trying to figure out who's leaving. There is a lot to juggle right now in December. So I understand why coaches are saying, let's push this back a little. Let's just do one window. This is going to make all our lives easier. I think it's better for the average college football fan. But then we got into the discussion today on Orange Nation. If you're going to do just one window, maybe you do it in the spring. I think the concern with that is, one, the spring game, which everyone wants a good spring game, and those are becoming kind of defunct, unfortunately. Two, there is some concern among advocacy groups that a student athlete will just go into kind of a dark place if they realize, I'm definitely leaving here. I can't leave until the spring. So I'm just not going to go to class here. There's no point. I know I'm leaving, but I just can't make that decision yet. I'm not even going to try in football practice. That's kind of a concern. That's a pretty big concern. And then also, I think a coach wants their new quarterback to come in January, get a full spring camp with them. There's not a lot of starting quarterbacks. We talked about that last week. Joey Aguilar, Steve Angeli were two starting quarterbacks that were spring portal ads, and that's pretty rare. A lot of quarterbacks want to learn the playbook in the spring, then master it in the fall. So those are the reasons why it's probably not going to be just a spring transfer portal window, and they opted for the January move. It's all fascinating, though. If you have any thoughts on that, call in at 315-437-7644. When we come back, I'll get into why I'm feeling much better about Syracuse tomorrow against UConn in the home opener. My score prediction before we wrap up on the program tonight. Drive time 5 to 6 with Tim Leonard. Thanks for tuning in here on ESPN Radio, QSportsTalk.com.
This is Orange.
Let me catch up on the chat. What's up, Kev? Oh, there is a Hilton right near Marshall Street. What do I know, Dom? Freaking probably drive by it every day. Shows you I'm never looking for a hotel. There used to be the Sheridan. That's now dorms. And was one right off Marshall. Yeah, San Diego Q's. I think I just laid it out with the spring window. I kind of am leaning more towards they got it right now with the, if you're going to do one window, it's January. You're never going to have two down linemen. Like the 2-3-5 you're laying out, that doesn't even exist. I mean, that's not enough guys to fill out a scheme, but I know what you're getting at. There might be more opportunities for blitzing if you have three down linemen, like more that classify as a blitz. But the point still holds that if they're number one in the country in blitzing after week one, that means they're, if anything, blitzing or sending an extra rusher or whatever you want to call it. Like, it's not because they're not being aggressive enough, or I just did a double knot, but I think you know what I mean. Well, I went here for school. I went to Q's from 2016 to 2020. Moved back here in 2022. But yeah, I mean, I grew up in North Carolina. Thank you, Orange NY. Yeah, I'm very rare in that regard. I mean, I talk to people and they're like, oh, I'm from Rochester, now I live in North Carolina, or I'm from Syracuse, now I live in North Carolina. Everyone's like, why are you up here? But I love it up here. I really like the changing of the seasons, and the job obviously is really what drew me up here, but I really enjoyed my time here when I was a student. It gets really hot in North Carolina, and this time of year, you can't beat it here in Syracuse. And the summers overall, you don't have to deal with thunderstorms and stuff. Guess that's, there's pros and cons to anywhere you live. Yeah, the Carolinas, literally Cary is where I'm from, and that is a area that is growing a ton, that whole Research Triangle area. And I think I said it before, but the joke about Cary is Containment Area for Relocated Yankees is what it stands for. Thanks for listening, Orange NY. Carowinds is cool. I've been there a couple times. That was the first roller coaster I ever went on. Locked On I did in North Carolina, Dom. When I first graduated, it was COVID. I went home to North Carolina, and then I was living in Winston-Salem because that's where the Learfield studios are. And I don't know if you guys, how many, Dom I know knows this because he's been a Locked On follower forever, but I was doing basically studio hosting for Syracuse games. That was my first gig out of college. And then this opening came up here in Syracuse, and I kind of worked my way up to this. But that was a good role for me when I first graduated because there was nothing in sports media, really. Everything was on shutdown mode, and it was close to home in Winston-Salem. So every Locked On episode was probably recorded in my apartment in Winston-Salem, if I remember correctly. Yeah, Dom, you're OG, for sure. I appreciate you. It is cool. I've had a couple of people. I mean, Locked On was fun for me and Tyler to do, for anyone that listened to that. And I kind of treat this now. I've got a daily platform for an hour. I mean, Tyler and I would go like 30 minutes Locked On, but it was every day. And the premise is pretty similar. Yeah, I like that a lot, San Diego Cuse. You don't want to get stuck in a bubble. And, you know, a lot of my friends from high school have not left there, which is fine. It's a nice area, but I like that I've seen other parts of the world. This is kind of the time to do it. Back in on Drive Time. Final show of the week. Thanks to everyone for tuning in to our first week of the new show. Tim Leonard with you every weeknight, 5 to 6 p.m. I'll be doing all the pregame stuff for Learfield hosting and sideline reporting tomorrow, so come say hi if you're out by the quad. First Syracuse football home game of the year. Need a win tomorrow against UConn, and let's get into the idea of why I do think Syracuse is going to get that much-needed win tomorrow, bounce back after the loss to Tennessee in the game tomorrow against UConn. So I've been talking about it all throughout the week and been talking to everyone I know about this game. And it feels like the general perception of how this game will go down has tilted more towards UConn, whether that is the spread that opened at 8.5, 9.5. Now it is seemingly at 6.5. I think it stayed put at 6.5 throughout much of the last couple days. And I'm not saying that line feels wrong, but I do feel pretty confident that Syracuse is going to cover the spread. And the biggest reason for that is when you look at what were the biggest concerns for Syracuse in week one, I think they have a very good chance to correct those concerns because, to me, a lot of the issues were how they matched up personnel-wise to an extent. I've already made the claim that they were not outclassed in that game against Tennessee. I think they did not play well, of course, out of the gate. They played a little bit tight because they are a young team. They're a talented team, but a young team. And that was a very big stage. But what I'm getting at is, we've said it throughout the week. The defensive line, the run defense was not good. They didn't win enough one-on-one battles in the trenches. You really should be able to win one-on-one battles against UConn in the trenches. I think we can all agree they should be much better in that phase of the game tomorrow. They didn't tackle well. It's easier to bring down a UConn ball carrier than Tennessee. This is no slight against UConn. It's just the reality of Tennessee is recruiting the best of the best. Tennessee has superior speed and athleticism and elusiveness, all that stuff to UConn. The biggest concern with the offense in week one, well, there really weren't a ton of concerns because actually they put up basically 28 points against an elite Tennessee defense that returned a lot from last year. But the biggest concern was they did not hit any explosive plays, really. They had that Will Nixon nice play that was scripted on the first play from scrimmage for Syracuse, 21-yard catch. They had a 29-yard catch to Jonte Cook on 4th and 10 over the middle. Easton Willis, who had a terrific game, of course, but he didn't have a run longer than 14 yards. Well, they should hit some explosive plays tomorrow against UConn. They hit explosive plays against them last year all over the field. I do think that score last year was misleading. I think Syracuse outplayed them on all the metrics more than just a 7-point win. Darryl Gill looked incredible against UConn last year. They have Darryl Gill, an improved version, hopefully this year. They have Jonte Cook, who they didn't have last year. I know they lost way more than they have, but what I'm getting at is the talent has not dropped off enough to the point where they hit explosive plays last year. They have the same offensive coordinator. Steve Angeli, I think, is going to play better this week. I think the whole team's going to play better this week. There had to be some nerves. Game one, basically a road game, crazy environment. You talk to the players. Easton Willis told me this week that's the craziest atmosphere he's ever been a part of. And he played great, but this is a different deal. You're at home. Yes, there's pressure on Syracuse. There's more pressure on the Orange. And the whole idea of this is UConn Super Bowl and Syracuse might take them late, I don't think that flies. That's not going to be a thing with Fran Brown coming off a loss. And that's another reason why I feel good about Syracuse. Fran Brown has not lost back-to-back games. And when you dig into that further, I will admit one of those was Holy Cross, and I really thought they played pretty poorly against Holy Cross week 4 last year after the loss to Stanford. That, to me, was the lowest point of the season where I was not very confident Syracuse was going to be a 10-win football team. I didn't really see it after that Holy Cross game, honestly. And they still won the game easily, but it was just because it was Holy Cross. It's like Colgate next week. But the other two games, Virginia Tech off the loss to Pittsburgh, got down early, but stayed in it. Great rally, great win when they were slight underdogs. Cal was maybe the best win of the season compared to the spread. I guess Miami, but Cal, they were 7-point underdogs, long trip after a tough loss to BC. They bounced back. So given Fran Brown's track record, limited track record, but still just the culture he's building, it makes sense that they are really PO'd after what happened, and they're going to come out and they're not going to let the first quarter be the issue. So I'm feeling much better about Syracuse the more I dig into this game. I'll give you my score prediction on the other side as we wrap up week 1 of Drive Time. You can call in right now. We'll work you in before our final timeout or before we wrap up the show. 315-437-7644. If you want to drop some takes before the game tomorrow, Syracuse and UConn. Noon start tomorrow inside the Dome. We're back to wrap things up on Drive Time. QSportsTalk.com, ESPN Radio.
Always a thrill when the whole...
Yeah, it seems like everyone's on the over, right? I'm kind of on it too, but... But yeah, I'm with you, M. Lowitz. Hopefully I'm saying that right. Does seem like a lot of points. Should be up and down. UConn plays pretty quick. I think the concern really is, will UConn score enough points to get to the over, which... Yeah, Steve needed the show to be over today, Phil. He's had it with Paulie all week. Everyone always asks me, like, do they actually hate each other? And they definitely don't. But this week, they were actually, like, legitimately thinking, you know, let's just end this show, and I'm done with both. I'm done with you, and you're done with me. Not in obviously a serious way, but it's always fun to see them go back and forth. But this week, they were in especially different moods. Yeah, Kev, I think Steve was legitimately fed up, but again, he doesn't actually hate him. There's no doubt about that. Paulie just gets on his nerves like anyone. Yeah, I mean, the show started today and seconds in, he's like, why are you in a mood? What did he say to him? He's like, you're giving me attitude. They're just like an old married couple. Yeah, you got to have that chemistry for sure, Dom. Paulie will always dig. If Paulie sees any chance to dig, he's going to do it. Yeah, he said salty, right? Is that what he said? All right, let's all drop our score predictions. What do we got before I give out mine? Jordan, you got a score prediction? Got a score prediction? That's what we're doing. I don't care about the Chargers, Jordan.
Okay. Sorry about your lower third. I've been making sure that the ones that I've been editing works because all the ones I'm.
Oh, I haven't even noticed. You're good.
No, I don't. Here's what a score prediction.
Love Gil Gross.
I officially jured.
Yes, that's awesome. Certificate of appreciation.
I put that piece of paper that is Sunny 102 material there so that it was seen and taken care of. No, don't put it there. You need to put it like input.
Wow, 41-15 for Phil. I love it. It's a big win for the Cuse. I can see it. A lot of high-scoring scores here. 31-24, Jen. That was last year. Right? Yeah. Same score as last year. Yeah, pretty awesome. Let's give it up for Jordan. Completed jury duty. Got the certificate to prove it.
Everybody say.
A lot of 40s on these. I like it. Jen's very proud of you.
Thank you.
Everyone's proud of Jordan.
Thank you. We did such a great job.
Did you convict someone? I guess you can talk about it now, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, but there were 64 counts, and they certainly weren't convicted of all of them.
Okay. That's a lot of counts. No wonder it took a while. What was the total time? 3 weeks?
Yes, from when I got there to start selecting, 14 days because Labor Day. Courts aren't open. But yeah. Yeah, no, it was a mess.
Give it up for Paul McCoy. He didn't complete jury duty, but just give it up for him anyway.
You don't have one of these.
Let me go photocopy it real quick. Let's get it into the computer. I'll edit it.
All right, I'm coming back. Get out of the studio.
Oh, jeez.
Flee.
Get this going.
You know what? Why don't you get one of these before you start bossing people around, huh? Huh?
Upbeat song to end the week on Drive Time. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. First week of the show, 5 to 6 going forward. Make us a part of your routine. We appreciate everyone on the Q Sports Talk chat. Always a fun time in there, no matter what the show is. Q Sports Talk Twitch stream. We're dropping our score predictions during the break. A lot of high-scoring Syracuse wins in our chat. And now it is time for me to give you my official score prediction. We laid out why I think Syracuse is going to cover in the last segment. You can always find these shows archived immediately. YouTube page, qsportstalk.com. Podcast as well. 1 hour podcast and everything you need to know about Syracuse sports. Commute to work, anything like that. We will get the podcast up. Subscribe to the podcast on ESPN Syracuse /Utica Rome going forward. And you'll also get Orange Nation, all the Orange Nation interviews on that podcast feed. You'll be the best Syracuse fan you can possibly be if you subscribe to the ESPN Syracuse Utica Rome podcast feed, as well as check out our YouTube page. You can subscribe to that as well, qsportstalk.com. But after all those shameless plugs, I've got Syracuse winning this game 34-21, the final score. Don't even have to watch the game. That's what's going to happen. The three guys I'm really interested to see play tomorrow and see if they have better games. Demetrius Samuel Jr., I want to know, is he going to be out there on offense at all? But also, I just want to see him take a step up. I think he will play much better against UConn. He'll be one of the more talented guys on the field. Jamie Tremble, how much are we going to see him at linebacker? Is he going to start? Is he going to be out there right away? 18 snaps last week, graded as one of the better linebackers on the team on Pro Football Focus. Is he strictly D? Is he going to play a little bit tight end? And Jonte Cook, I think, has a breakout game tomorrow. I'm interested to see early on if he's fully healthy. Fran Brown mentioned a couple guys are questionable. Jonte Cook left the game a little bit early last time. He's had encouraging comments throughout the week about how he feels. Darryl Gill had the big game last year against UConn. I think Steve Angeli will throw for close to 300 yards. I think the Orange will move the ball. I've been on the overall week. My only concern, the more I dig into it, is I think Syracuse has such an advantage personnel-wise against UConn, and I think we're almost to a point where we're overlooking that advantage just because of how much UConn looked like world beaters against Central Connecticut State and the week one overreaction stuff. I think this is still a Syracuse team that has a big talent advantage, and I think they will win this game. I think they will cover. And you can yell at me on Monday if I'm wrong and call in. 34-21 is my score prediction for tomorrow. Listen to our pregame coverage here on ESPN Radio. Listen to me tomorrow if you'd like out on the quad live from 10 to 12. Learfield broadcast. We got Yankees on deck coming up next if you'd like to hear me yap some more. Thanks for tuning in to week one of Drive Time. Thanks to Giovanni Heater, Paul, Jordan, everyone out there. Jordan, who has completed jury duty, got the certificate to prove it. Shout out to everyone who tuned in on the Q Sports Talk chat, YouTube page. It's been fun to get this show off the ground 1 week in. And we will chat with you Monday, 5 to 6 next week to see how wrong or how right I was about this big game tomorrow against UConn. Until then, enjoy the rest of your night. Enjoy the weekend, everyone.
It's time.